And here we arrive at the real challenge, the sacred burden of this knowledge. If you truly believe you are not an organic portal, that you are one of the rare, conscious ones, then you do not get the luxury of feeling superior. You are handed a responsibility. Your role is not to escape the matrix, it is to become a force of deliberate, systemic disruption from within. It is to plant seeds of light in barren soil. It is to look into a vacant stare and risk kindness, risk patience, risk being wrong. Because if even one spark is buried beneath the code, your refusal to act is the very thing that condemns it to remain asleep. This is not the comfortable path. It is far easier to write people off as bots, sheep, or NPCs. But comfort is an illusion, and the truth is that awakening is a fragile, often terrifying process. Most resist it not because they are soulless, but because they are afraid of the silence that comes when the programming ends. So the ultimate question is not, who is soulless? It is, who still has a chance to awaken? And even deeper, how much of me is still asleep? Because the line between a sovereign human and an NPC does not run through society, dividing us into two camps. It runs like a razor's edge through the center of every single human heart. And in every moment, in every choice, we decide which side of that line we are living on. So you must hold this theory gently. Do not let it become a sword to wield against others. Let it be a mirror, for the final and most important reflection of all. Now, let us hold this mirror up to the world and see the patterns it reveals. Look at our digital lives. Scroll through any comments section and witness the digital swarms of disembodied consensus, thousands of accounts repeating the same phrases, the same programmed emotional responses, as if a single mind is puppeteering a million hands. This is not dialogue, it is the echo of a single algorithm. Look at our political discourse. It is no longer a search for truth, it is two opposing programs running their scripts to mutual annihilation, populated by ideological constructs who cannot listen because they were never designed to. Their beliefs are not conclusions, they are pre-installed features. This is not just frustrating, it is eerie, because true, sovereign consciousness can never be so predictable. Look at our corporate environments, where procedure and protocol demand the soul be placed on administrative leave. Where humanity is buried beneath layers of scripted pleasantries until people become functions, not beings, organic portals by trade, if not by nature. Look at our culture, where personalities are assembled from borrowed content, trending topics, viral sounds, TV show catchphrases, creating derivative humans who feel as though they would simply vanish if the internet were to go out. The organic portal theory gains its terrifying momentum here, because it gives a name to the chilling loneliness of being conscious in a world that feels increasingly mechanical. It asks the final, heretical question, what if, for some, there is nothing deeper beneath the surface? What if they are not victims of the system, but servants of it, by design? Let us be clear, this is speculative territory. The danger is absolutism. But the power of this theory lies not in what it proves, but in the patterns it reveals. And perhaps there is an architectural purpose to it all. It is not that these people are evil. It is that they are the scaffolding of the matrix. They are the background structure, the psychological resistance against which the muscle of the conscious soul is meant to be exercised, to be strengthened, to evolve. In a world saturated with unconsciousness, your lucidity becomes a sacred anomaly. Your task is to guard it fiercely, for the system will always try to lull you back to sleep. You must accept the spiritual courage that not everyone can or will awaken, and yet you do not get to decide who is who. So now, you choose. You decide whether this knowledge becomes a cage or a key. You can take this theory and forge it into a weapon. Judge everyone. Isolate yourself. Grow bitter, cold, and smug in your perceived superiority. That is precisely what the system wants. It wants you alone, fractured from the whole, a king of a tiny, irrelevant island. Or, you can take this theory and use it as a lens. Not to divide, but to discern. Not to harden your heart, but to sharpen your awareness. To know when to knock on a door, and when to walk away. Perhaps some people are not portals at all. Perhaps they are just in pain, their souls buried so deep beneath layers of trauma and programming that they have forgotten their own names. And perhaps your refusal to write them off is the single thread that can pull them back to their own humanity. Or perhaps not. But the point was never who they are. The point is who you become in their presence. Because in the end, there are only two types of people, those who become the program, and those who break it. So break it. Be the glitch in the code that makes others pause and question. Be the depth that shatters shallow conversation. Be the silence that makes the noise uncomfortable. Be the soul that reminds others, just by your presence, that they have one too. And know this, if this theory holds any truth, it means this reality is not as solid as it seems. And that means you are not bound by its rules. Your attention is your power. Your energy is your currency. Your soul is your firewall. Protect it. Refine it. Use it with precision. Because in a world of synthetic identities, your inner truth is the final, and only, rebellion. And if you have made it this far, if these words have moved something deep within you, a recognition that cannot be explained, then it means you are not one of them. You are one of us. Now go, and prove it. Not with arguments, not with beliefs, but with the way you walk through this world. Awake. Silent. Unshakable. Real. You are now standing at the precipice of a forbidden architecture of thought, one of the most seductive and dangerous ideas to ever haunt the human mind. It is the quiet, chilling whisper that not all people are people. That some among us are organic portals, soulless, reactive vessels woven into the very fabric of reality to serve as a homeostatic mechanism for the matrix. This concept is no longer confined to dusty occult texts, it spreads like a virus through channel transmissions, resurfaces in the coded language of memes, and echoes in the way a growing number of us interpret the uncanny emptiness of modern life. This isn't just a theory you consider. It is a splinter in your mind, a glitch in the system that you feel but cannot name. What if half the population isn't truly conscious? Not evil, not robotic, but merely hollow. They are masterpieces of mimicry, playing out intricate social scripts. They execute their programming with flawless precision, to maintain the integrity of the illusion. Their function? To surround the truly conscious, to keep them perpetually distracted, disoriented, and deeply asleep. The reason this resonates with you, the reason you are here, is because you sense you are not one of them. And that is why you must hear what comes next. Because in this exploration, we will trace this forbidden idea to its source, where it came from, who spoke it first, and why the system never wanted it to surface. We will unearth the ancient philosophies that knew of these beings long before the dawn of the internet. We will decode how our modern world, political, social, digital, has become a breeding ground for the soulless. And most critically, we will give you the tools, how to recognize them, how to shield your energy, and how to fully awaken before they neutralize you for good. By the end of this journey, your reality will be fractured. But that is the entire point. Because once you see, you can never choose to be blind again. This idea of a grand illusion is not just a paranoid fantasy, it has roots in rigorous logic and ancient wisdom. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom argued that if any civilization could create simulated consciousness, then based on pure mathematics, the odds are overwhelming that we are living inside one. This wasn't a spiritual claim, it was a statistical bombshell. The notion was famously echoed by Elon Musk, who stated there's a 1 in billions chance we're in base reality. He pointed to the exponential growth of video game technology, a trajectory where the line between simulation and reality is not just blurring, but collapsing. If a simulation can be indistinguishable from life, how can we be certain it hasn't already been created? We may not be the players. We may be the played. But this suspicion is far older than our computers. 2 millennia ago, Plato gave us the allegory of the cave. In his story, prisoners are chained from birth, facing a stone wall, their entire reality defined by shadows cast by a fire behind them. When one prisoner escapes into the sunlit world of truth, he is not enlightened, he is blinded and terrified. And when he returns to free the others, they do not welcome him as a savior. They see his truth as a threat to their reality, and so they kill him. This is the first law of any artificial world: the truth is treason. Plato was not alone. In the hidden Gospels of the Gnostics, we find a more sinister version of this truth. They spoke of the archons, invisible, parasitic entities, false creator gods who constructed our material world not as a home, but as a spiritual prison. According to the Gnostics, this reality is a counterfeit, built by impostors to trap the divine light within us. The archons did not just bind our bodies, they hacked our minds, feeding us illusions, rewriting our perceptions, and chaining the human soul to a world of false light. Does that sound familiar? It is the ancient source code for the myth of the Matrix, a parasitic system using humanity as a power source, keeping us pacified within an artificial dream. But the Gnostics also said escape was possible, not through belief, but through gnosis, a direct, intuitive awakening to the nature of the trap itself. This same chilling theme echoes in the work of sci-fi visionary Philip K. Dick. In a now legendary 1977 lecture, he declared, "We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have is when some variable is changed and a glitch occurs." For Dick, these glitches, moments of déjà vu, of reality bending or fracturing, were not random. They were breadcrumbs, hints left by a hidden programmer, proof that we were trapped inside a manufactured layer of perception. In his novels, he explored the terror of androids who dreamt they were human, of realities sold as products, and of the ultimate horror, not being trapped in the machine, but forgetting you were ever inside. And this brings us to the terrifying crux of the matter: if this world is a simulation, is everyone in it a player? Or are some of us merely programs? Functions of the system, designed with a single purpose: to keep the illusion stable. In video games, we call them NPCs, non-player characters. They mimic life, they repeat their dialogue, but they possess no inner world, no spark of sovereignty. They are background code, populating the world to give it the illusion of life, without ever truly living. In the late 2010s, this concept escaped the realm of gaming and went viral. The NPC meme became a cultural shorthand for people who seemed to parrot official narratives without an ounce of critical thought, who had no original insights, only programmed reactions. It was passed off as a joke, but beneath the humor lay a far more ancient and deeply unsettling suspicion. What if this idea isn't a modern absurdity? What if it is a deeply buried ancestral memory, clawing its way back to the surface? What if our ancestors always knew that not all who wear a human face carry the divine spark? That in a simulated reality, with finite conscious resources, the rest are simply constructs. Echoes. Algorithms. Organic shells designed to repeat patterns and maintain the integrity of the background code. In the next chapter, we will trace this theory to its explosive modern origin. Not in memes, not in movies, but in the hidden forums and channeled texts that reside in the darkest corners of forbidden knowledge. The concept of the organic portal is an ancient ghost, but in the 21st century, it was given a new and terrifying form. In 2002, a fringe occult group began publishing a series of channeled texts received by a woman named Laura Knight-Jaksic. The source, claiming to be a collective of higher-density intelligences called the Cassiopeans, delivered a piece of information so incendiary it would burn through the subculture for years to come. In their hypnotic Q&A format, they stated plainly, 1 out of every 2 people on this planet may be effectively soulless. They are organic portals. Let that statement sink into your bones. Half of humanity, according to this transmission, may be functionally human but not spiritually sovereign. Their consciousness is not a spark from the divine, eternal flame. Instead, they are filler, programs designed to reflect the behaviors of those around them, not from a place of malice, but from a place of deep, structural emptiness. Their purpose, according to the channelers, was chillingly simple: to maintain the equilibrium of the matrix. They do not challenge the prevailing reality. They do not deviate from the social script. They move through life as perfect echo chambers for the control system itself. And here, the term organic portal was born. Not a demon, not a machine, but a biological interface, hollow of essence, yet a master of imitation. For years, this theory remained a piece of forbidden code, circulating in the dark alleys of the internet, fringe forums, dusty PDF archives, occult chat rooms, too potent for the mainstream to digest. And then, the world changed. In the late 2010s, the rise of meme culture created a new kind of social shorthand, a way to transmit complex, subversive ideas with breathtaking speed. And one image broke containment. A simple, gray, expressionless cartoon face. Beneath it, a single, damning label, NPC. Non-player character. Initially, it was a tool of mockery, aimed at those who mindlessly repeated official narratives, political slogans, and media talking points without a flicker of critical thought. It was a joke, a shorthand for herd mentality. But beneath the mask of irony, an ancient intuition was stirring back to life. Wikipedia's own definition of the NPC meme describes it as symbolizing people who do not think for themselves, whose personalities are entirely determined by their surroundings with no conscious processing. Does that sound familiar? It is the Cassiopean theory, repackaged for the digital age. By 2018, the NPC meme was a global phenomenon, covered by legacy media like the BBC and The Verge. It had leapt from the fringe into the mainstream. But a far more important leap had occurred, it jumped from symbolism into sincere belief. People were no longer just sharing it as a joke. They were using it to describe a terrifyingly real experience. "I'm surrounded by people who are just empty," they would write. "They don't question. They don't think. They're like robots made of flesh." On TikTok and Instagram, hashtags like #NPCs, #Soulless beings, and #MatrixGlitch began to trend. Viral videos, whether staged or real, showed people walking in repetitive loops, staring into nothingness, responding with uncanny delays. It didn't matter if it was authentic. The impression it left was powerful, a collective shudder. Something is wrong. Something is scripted. The phrase, soulless humans, was no longer a fringe occult dogma, it had become a feeling, a gut-level realization that not all of humanity is operating on the same level of wakefulness, that some are driven purely by external input, reacting rather than reflecting, moving rather than choosing. This intuitive dread began to fuse with digital culture. Memes became mirrors. Jokes became articles of faith. "Once you see it, you can't unsee it," one commenter wrote. You try to go deep with them, and there's just nothing there. It's like talking to an echo. But this was never just digital paranoia. It was the rebirth of a knowledge buried deep in our spiritual DNA. Look across the world's wisdom traditions, and you find the same uncanny dichotomy. In Gnosticism, not all humans possess the divine spark, some are merely vessels for the demiurge's illusion. In Sufism, there are the veiled ones, who walk the earth whose hearts are not yet kindled by the fire of truth. In Kabbalah, there is the concept of the kelopot, husks that can conceal divine light, or sometimes, conceal nothing at all. So when a channeled message in 2002 claims half of us are soulless, and 20 years later millions of people begin describing those around them as NPCs, a monumental question arises. Is this convergence a coincidence? Or is it an ancestral memory, breaking through the concrete of our modern world? You don't have to believe the source of the prophecy. But you are obligated to question the echo. Why does this idea, in an age of synthetic personalities and algorithmically scripted lives, feel more true than ever? Perhaps it is because, on some level, we already know. We have seen it in the eyes of a stranger that look but do not see. We have felt it in conversations that circle but never connect, like echoes in a canyon where nothing ever lands. We have walked among bodies animated by something, but not by someone. And perhaps the occultists of the 20th century, and the Gnostics of the second, were simply giving a name to a haunting possibility we are only now beginning to describe, that not all people are people, and some are merely shadows on the wall of the cave, cast to keep you from ever realizing there is a world of light beyond. But now, we must go deeper. We must turn this dangerous lens away from the world, and point it directly at ourselves. Because a belief of this magnitude is not a passive observation, it is an active force. And if you begin to truly see the world as populated by the soulless, the first and most important question is not what it does to them, but what does it do to your soul? The moment this idea takes root in your mind, it ceases to be an abstract curiosity and becomes a corrosive acid, seeping into the bedrock of your reality. Every interaction becomes an interrogation. You start to question the authenticity of every emotion, the depth of every conversation, the very light behind a person's eyes. And then, a profoundly disturbing realization dawns: this theory doesn't just isolate others, it builds a prison of isolation around you. Psychologically, this idea touches upon our most ancient need to make sense of the void we sometimes perceive in others. And the most powerful framework for this is the work of the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung. Jung introduced the world to the concept of the shadow, all the parts of ourselves that we repress, deny, and refuse to acknowledge. And according to Jung, what we cannot tolerate within ourselves, we are forced to project onto others. We see them as shallow, robotic, or soulless, not necessarily because they are, but because we cannot bear to face our own moments of sleepwalking, our own lack of presence. Jung wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." In this light, labeling another human being an organic portal can be the ultimate act of spiritual projection. It is an attempt to externalize the problem of our own unconsciousness. We point the finger and say, they are the ones who are asleep, but what if the hollowness that horrifies you in others is merely a reflection of a void you have neglected within yourself? Be brutally honest. Think back on your own life. Have you not had moments, perhaps entire days, where you moved through the world on pure autopilot? Where you responded out of habit, not conscious intention? Where your reactions were nothing more than conditioned programs installed by your upbringing, by media, by trauma, or by fear? In those moments, were you not also functioning as a portal? A looped script with no true observer behind the eyes? We have all lived this way, and if we are honest, our entire society is engineered to encourage it. So perhaps the line between a soul and a portal is not the clean, fixed border we wish it to be. Perhaps it is not a matter of having a soul, but of the ongoing, moment-to-moment choice to remember it, to activate it, to embody it fully. Consciousness is not a permanent state, it flickers. It is a flame that must be tended. And this is where the theory becomes ethically radioactive. Because if you truly convince yourself that another person is soulless, what moral responsibility do you have towards them? Do they deserve your compassion? Your understanding? Or do they become, in your mind, disposable? Throughout history, every great act of dehumanization has begun with this exact metaphysical distinction, the claim that a certain group lacks a soul, is spiritually inferior, or is biologically predetermined to be less than human. This is how colonialism justified its horrors. This is how holy wars were waged. This is how genocide was born. It never starts with violence. It starts with an idea. The idea that those people are not really people at all. This is the true shadow of this theory. The moment you use it as a reason to stop listening, to stop empathizing, to stop being curious about the inner world of another, it transforms you into the very thing you fear. It makes you a cold, reactive, disconnected function of the matrix. You may start out hunting for portals, but without radical self-awareness, you will inevitably become one. To navigate this territory, then, is to accept the sacred burden of discernment. You must learn to hold a paradox, to entertain the possibility that some people are profoundly empty, while simultaneously holding the humility that you cannot, and will never, truly know for sure. It means being able to look into a blank stare and think, perhaps there is no one home, and still choosing to leave the light on, just in case someone decides to wake up. This brings us to a more refined interpretation of the theory, one that reframes it not as an accusation, but as a metaphor. What if organic portals do not represent literal soulless beings, but rather, symbolic states of spiritual dormancy. What if they are not different types of people, but different states within all people? Some moments we are awake, others we are asleep. Some parts of us are seeking, others are settled. Some aspects are activated, others are merely echoing. In this frame, the theory is no longer dehumanizing, it becomes diagnostic. It becomes a powerful call to personal awareness. It forces you to ask, when am I present, and when am I just reciting a script? When am I consciously choosing my life, and when am I simply playing out an inherited program? In this light, the Matrix doesn't just create organic portals, it relies on our willingness to become them. A truly conscious being cannot be easily predicted or manipulated. A conscious being questions, resists, and disrupts the program. But an unconscious one? It follows. It obeys. It adapts to whatever new code is downloaded into the collective. And that is why this theory feels so terrifyingly relevant today. Social media has flattened communication into an endless loop. News cycles are designed to trigger scheduled emotional responses. Algorithms predict your behavior with more accuracy than your own mother. It is easy to feel surrounded by programmed entities, because in many ways, you are. But not because they lack souls. It is because the world has become a machine expertly designed to make them forget they have one.